helpful to the attendees. And we have speakers with us who are the winners of the our grant. And I would like to invite our director, Dr. Prachipol, who would be formally introducing our presenters of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Reshma. Thank you very much for initiating the webinar. I welcome everyone here on this platform wherein we have two amazing scholars who have been winners of Shastri Institute's Institutional Collaborative Research Grant. And I can begin with saying that very warm welcome all of you, those who are coming here as attendees and those who are speakers, or to my own colleagues from India side. And as Reshma said, this is the very first webinar in the series of how to craft a proposal. And we are trying to bring in people who have been successful awardees of various Shastri programs. And this is one of the programs that have been very interesting program in terms of receiving applications from both the ends as principal investigators and as a team from India and Canada side from our member institutions. This webinar is also special. Actually, we wish to have in-person workshops for our scholars who have been trying to, get this award and were not so successful in the past. We thought we will have a closed group workshops, organize a couple of workshops in southern area of India and then in other parts of India as well. But, this is a difficult time we are in right now. This pandemic has made us stay back to our homes and be safe for us as well as for the whole community that we live with. So we thought of, having these webinars so that while you are sitting at home or working virtually, can make use of the expert opinions, expertise that our scholars have in terms of drafting and crafting a proposal. So let me begin by introducing you to two of the scholars who are here with us today, Professor N and Professor Ravinder Kaur. Professor N is from Canada, and she is teaching at University of Fraser Valley. Dr. Kaur is from Punjab University, and she is former chairperson of Center for Advanced Studies from the Department of Geography of Punjab University, which is located in Chandigarh. Those who are not sure about the location, I just want to say this is a prominent state in India. And this university has been operating for, I think, I'm not sure, but I think almost 100 years now, Dr. Kaur? Yeah.
Yes.
So, old university. Yeah, a very prominent university in terms of their contribution in the world of academia and research. Dr. Kaur has 20 years of teaching experience and research experience, have specialization in urban and regional development in geography. She has been working on urban-rural relations, which is amazing area to work on. We see the rift between urban and rural societies in our world. I mean, especially in India, if you say, but this is prevailing fact throughout the world. And people who are working on this divide, on these two different settlements are very crucial for any kind of planning in terms of policy or in terms of doing research to build up those policies to govern the country in a uniform manner. So her contribution is immense, and she has. If you talk about her initial degrees, I mean, she holds a master's and PhD in geography, and she has been teaching. I mean, we were interacting informally, and I got to know that she has been teaching for quite a long time research methodology, which is the core of any research proposal that you present. So we look forward to have more from you, Dr. Kaur. I, as a scholar, can understand that how valuable contribution you can be making, this in this session today. She has worked tremendously with slum dwellers in Chandigarh, which is another area wherein we need to understand how we best can integrate them into our larger society, larger communities. Uh, so this is a bit about, I can't be telling you more, but you can always google her profile while you are listening to us. But she is an eminent scholar working for long in the areas wherein she has been successful achieving this grant from Shastri Institute. And she has successfully partnered with her dear colleague from Canada, Dr. Sherry N. And Sherry N is a registered urban planner, so she can we call you, of course, an architect and urban planner, and experienced educator, of course, and extensive experience in engaging internationally. She has initiated and led international projects related to child right, amazing, food systems, sustainable development goals, which is again a very important focused area for Shastri as well to work on. We have been organizing and supporting research in all SDGs and before that MDGs set by United Nations, and have immensely contributed in terms of funding the research in this area, which was really, really applied research and brought out some really, really amazing results and outcomes. Dr. Enns has experience managing programs, mobilization of resources, and working on projects in several countries, including Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, South Sudan, Somalia, and India. So you can see her experience in African countries and Asian countries as well. She has dealt with many, humanitarian projects within Eastern African community, and holds an MA in community and regional planning and PhD in international policy and program management. A very warm welcome to both of you, and I would not take much of time now in formally introducing any more further. Those who are interested can always go back to their sites and look for more details and get in touch with them as and when required after this webinar is over. So let me welcome once again the two speakers on this forum today. And I would like to request both of you to take over the lead here and help us trying to understand how to craft a winning proposal. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Kaur and Dr. N.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prachikal. And at the outset, let me thank you for giving me this opportunity to share our ideas. While I was just reflecting on the title of the webinar, Crafting a Research Proposal, it just struck to me, how can we differentiate drafting of research proposal and crafting of research proposal? And perhaps this would give insights to many of the participants of this webinar. And yes, one needs to understand the difference between drafting and crafting. When you draft a research proposal, it is essentially a document which would deal with what the proposed research is about, what is it trying to find out or achieve, how will it go about doing that, what will we learn from it, and why that is worth learning. This is when you draft a research proposal. When you craft a research proposal, in fact, it will be more carefully prepared, beautifully articulated, enthusiastic, interestingly written, and a skilled presentation of the ideas and facts. Now, all of us who are attending these webinars, I'm told, have either tried for some fellowships, Shastri fellowships, or are trying to eye one. My best wishes to all of you. Yes, we had also proposed a research proposal to SICRG, and we were fortunate enough to be among the lists of the people who were granted this project. Now, let me begin with from where one should think of writing a research proposal. In fact, most of you must be familiar with the SICRG website. And when you go to the SICRG website, you find various provisions listed there. And the online submission portal of the SICRG furnishes various details. And when you go thinking that you need to write down a research proposal, what is wanted from you is a project title, an abstract, objectives, background rationale, project description, and above all, project outcome. And the most beautiful thing which I found on the SICRG portal was they have laid down the evaluation criteria there and then itself. Such a transparent mechanism. When you know that 10 points are to be granted on your academic merit, which includes your research abilities, clarity of the objectives, scope, and methodology, one really works on it. The coherence and importance of proposed activities on a given timeline, you are given 10 points. Evidence of binational collaboration, if at all it is a collaborative project, and you need to give a scholarship of the researchers and involvement of young scholars. Clarity of expected outcomes and relevance of the project fetches you 10 points. And of course, justified budget gives you 10 points. Now, these are the parameters which have been laid and which a researcher should always keep in mind when you are supposed to craft and draft a research proposal. To my mind, a research proposal is judged by two touchstones: viability and capability. Viability refers to the possibility of its completion, worthiness as a research exercise, and the capacity of the candidate to see it through. Capability refers to the capacity of the researcher to carry it out. For judging the ability of the researcher to make a success is the quality of the research proposal itself. It reflects the overall awareness of the researcher of the theme chosen for study, skill in making a convincing case for research on a select topic, and capacity to write with clarity in a comprehensive and coherent manner. Clarity, comprehensive, coherence are 3 C's, which I always tell my students also, that which are warranted in a research proposal. In fact, a proposal is a kind of standalone document, easily intelligible to a reader, even to a non-expert. It should be drafted and crafted in a manner that makes intelligent sense. The first and the foremost step is to ensure an acquaintance with the guidelines laid down by the institution, in this case SICRG, which I just now read, and one should be able to know the expected nature and quality of the research which the research organization wants, the duration within which it has to be completed, the literary style, etc., etc. You can all refer to SICRG guidelines. Before framing the research proposal, the researcher must take care of certain imperatives. Most essential is an exciting enunciation of the title of the proposed work. Now, how do you frame a title? That is $1 million question. Now, identification of the title should, in fact, flow from identification of a gap in current research through literature survey, and it should be its basis. It is to be ensured that it promises an exploration into an undiscovered arena. Likewise, the time framework of the proposed study calls for justification. Relevance of the work should be made explicit. The reason for choosing the said topic, its significance and approach to be followed in pursuing the whole work are to be clearly enunciated. A proposal should aim at institutional funding, and if it is aiming at the grant, it should be framed in a spirit and style that aligns with the funding institution and the objectives of the funding agency. The details of the budget covering honorarium, salary, financial outlay for fieldwork, equipment, books, journals must be given in the justifiable manner. Please underline the word justifiable. We need to give justification whatever financial outlay you are proposing. Then you need to have a timeline which have to be prepared keeping in mind the objectives or the stated objectives. To my mind, there are 7 basic questions which a research proposal should answer. What is it all about? That speaks for the aims of the research proposal. What do we do already? Know about it? Yes, this is the literature review. What do we need to find out? These are the research questions. How will we get the necessary information? It speaks of your methods and methodology. 5th, how long will it take and what will it cost? Refers to the timeline and resources. Is the research socially acceptable? This refers to the ethics. And of course, what will be the benefits? Speaks of the outcome of the project. And all these terms you will find in the project description which the SICRG portal displays. Now, when you are reviewing the literature, go with an argument which could be considered planned, structured, and a balanced argument forms the bedrock of a successful research proposal. Now, let me start giving examples from the proposal which we crafted. The title of our project was Making Chandigarh Child-Friendly Lessons from Canada. Believe me, it took me a lot of time coming to this title. I reviewed all the literature, international as well as national studies which were conducted in this arena, and I was trying to find where does the research gap lie, because the research gap would help me identifying the title of the project itself. And when I was going through various international and national studies, I found that research on this theme was at a very nascent stage in India. And that gave me a confidence to move ahead with this title. At the same time, I was looking at Canada to learn lessons from it. And when I was reviewing literature, I could know that the Canadian planners had done marvelous efforts in reclaiming green spaces, which were very, very child-friendly. And the Canadian initiatives, especially in the field of child-friendly cities, there were numerous organizations which had taken interest in making communities more child and youth friendly. And I knew that my collaborator, Sherry Ann's, works in this, and she has an edge over other scholars and has a long experience of working. So I chose my collaborator and I thought to work on this title. Now, every research proposal has to stem out from research questions. This is
Dr.
what...
Dr. Kaur, can I pose a question here? It's a very, very important question. If you don't mind and if you allow me, I just want to check on, did you know Professor N beforehand? because this is the basic question everyone comes up with: how to partner, how to barge in and say, hey, I want to collaborate with you. So how did you go about it? Can you please
Yes,
tell us about?
yes. Very relevant question you have raised. I was supposed to come to that. I had heard Cherry Ann speaking on a symposium which was conducted in India during 90s in our university itself with the SICRG grant. And that was on child-friendly cities. I had heard her and I was very confident that if I have to make an action plan for Chandigarh itself, and if I ever roll out a proposal, Sherry Ann's would be my collaborator. And then when I had a couple of opportunities to meet her, to listen to her, and of course, when I saw her biodata, I was very confident that she is the right choice for me. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much. It's just so that for the attendees, I would like to say that sometimes you are not sure how to go about it. So don't hesitate to come back to us, because we have list of people, list of scholars who have been successful in the areas wherein you might be interested to collaborate on. And we can help you a bit to navigate this search of a collaborator for you. So at times when you feel at loss that how to go about it, come back to Shastri. We are here to help you out. Thank you.
Thank
Please
you so
carry.
much. I think this information will be of much use to the scholars who are trying to write collaborative proposals. And yes, because you see there's a small line in your outline mentioned that we will not help you. We will not be able to help you find your partner organization. So you have to do it on self. But then if you have a list, I think that would be wonderful.
To some extent, we ask to find themselves, because it will add on more nipples. If we have a limited number of partners with us, then probably we will be just stuck to that. So it's open. So you may just go and you can find your partner.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. It gives more independence to the researcher. And then you see, before collaboration, you have a lot of communication with the scholar, and I also had the same with Sherry Ann's, and one really feels that yes, you would click together, and like-minded people need to be forming a team.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Can I proceed ahead, or is there any
Absolutely.
other question, ma'am?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Now, as I was telling you see, every research proposal to my mind should stem from, it has to stem from research questions. I have been staying in Chandigarh for the last 3 decades. I have worked on Chandigarh. And I always would wonder that why did planners not address the needs of children in the city? And I always used to wonder that city has enough green spaces, leisure valleys, gardens, sector greens, forest, which are so eco-friendly and which make the environs beautiful. But why could the planners never think to provide opportunities to children to explore and enjoy their independent mobility in the city? The city has a lot of green spaces and parks, but falls short of playgrounds. The city's children cannot be independently encouraged for independent mobility to get around, unaccompanied by an adult. And of recent, when I visit parks where I find children playing in the gardens and parks, there are elderly going out for their morning and evening walks, and they object to the use of such spaces for children because they play with toys like balls, frisbee, rings. And I have witnessed a contestation of space which is developing for the city green spaces and parks. And children, unfortunately, have to yield in. And then there were two questions which perturbed me, and they are the underpinning questions of the present research. Number one, how can we shift the focus from the idea of a child coming into the world to a child being in the world? I repeat, how can we shift the focus from the idea of a child coming into the world to a child being in the world? Secondly, how can children be considered as citizens rather than future citizens? Now, these two questions were the key questions which this project proposal would answer. Now, having posed these research questions, the objectives were framed, project goals were framed, and the project goals would revolve around assessment of child friendliness in Chandigarh Smart City, learning from Canadian child-friendly initiatives, experiences, and best practices, and of course, proposing child-friendly initiatives in Chandigarh Smart City. Now, when it comes to formulation of the research problem, let me tell you, my friends, there are again two C's which you should keep in mind: the concept and the context. And when I wove the research problem, I kept in mind the concept of child-friendly cities and the context of Chandigarh, which I wanted to make child-friendly. Now, the context would arise from the sad reality where the voices of the children were forgotten when the city was planned, as I just now mentioned. And the context would also arrive from the facts that recently there have been a number of cases of child kidnapping and abduction, dog bites, monkey bites, which are increasing rampantly and randomly reported from various sectors of the cities. Now, all these restrict their independent mobility, and independent mobility of children is the hallmark of the concept of child friendliness. Now, when you weave the two, you are able to arrive at a research problem, the concept and the context. Now, if you have woven it, then you further move to research execution, which is methodology and the project timeline. For this proposal, a mixed methods approach was considered the best, where qualitative and quantitative methods would be used. Qualitative methods would primarily consist of observation, focus group discussions, key persons interviews, and child-led mapping techniques. Narratives would be developed, and quantitative techniques would largely involve use of data analysis techniques like GIS, and this study would be divided in various phases. Now, when you have to work on the execution plan, you have to be very, very meticulous. You have to align your work execution plan with your stated objectives. There has to be a complete alignment with the stated objectives and the work plan for its execution proposed. And we did it. Keeping in mind each and every objective, we laid down the methodology which was most befitting for it. And we divided, yes? Is there a question?
No, yeah, there are questions, so we can announce that questions will be taken after the presentation is over.
Okay.
A few wants to ask question, they are raising hands, so this is for them that we will take a question after the presentation is over.
Reshma, would you be kind enough to tell me how much time am I left with?
I mean, we started at 9:30, it's 10.
I should be winding up
wrapping
because Sherry Hans needs to speak.
Yes.
Right. You see, there is a very, very important element in the project proposals which Shastri funds, and those are the dissemination strategies. One should be very, very clear as to what dissemination strategies would you be proposing in your project proposal, where involvement of the government, NGOs, CBOs could be taken up. One should also be very clear about the expected outcomes from the project, and it could be in form of sensitization, dissemination, formulation of action plans, or if you want to initiate a research agenda for the future researchers. You have to be very, very articulate when you have to strengthen Indo-Canadian collaborations. Now, this means your project proposal should explicitly bring out how Canada's experience and commitment would be helpful to India, and in return, how India's cross-cultural insights would strengthen Canadian initiatives for the said theme. You have to give a very, very justified timeline for the activities proposed, and you can do it quarter-wise, and even in the quarter, we preferred month-wise. And that gives an idea to the evaluators how well versed you are with the objectives stated, methodology in hand, and the timeline proposed by you to execute the entire project. And of course, in the end, you need to have a justified budgetary outlay. And this in turn should go back to your objectives, your goals, your methodology, your timeline, and there should be a reflection of an integration in the budget outlay itself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kaur. And now I would invite Dr. Sherry in to bring in her opinion about how to win a successful, how to be successful in getting a grant from Shastri Institute and of course from other funding agencies. Over to you, Dr. N.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I wanted to check to make sure my screen is sharing with you all. Yes, okay. First, I want to thank our hosts as well as the moderators for the opportunity to share, for the opportunity to work on this project. I'd like to thank my colleague for the very informative presentation. I was taking notes as she was presenting, so thank you. And I'd also like to acknowledge the University of the Fraser Valley and specifically Dr. Satwinder Bains and the role of the Institute SASI in terms of facilitating collaboration. So with that in mind, and knowing that many of you that are attending this webinar are asking a question about how to be successful in grant proposals, project proposals, and as well perhaps trying to figure out your pathway, I thought that if you know, I could look at more generic ideas and concepts related to grant proposal, that perhaps that would build on the articulate presentation that was just shared. So with that in mind, I wanted to sort of just give you a small snapshot of the kinds of projects I've worked on, everything from government funding to university projects, a range of donors, to more collaborative projects, to more city policy and working with the NGO sector. But having said that, I think it's important to note that where I've learned the most is from my failures, because every time there's a success, and in this case, I'm largely, you know, the careful crafting of the proposal that was done by my colleague. But of course, we learn from our successes, but I believe that we learn even more from our failures and where things didn't work out. So it's that I would like to pull on or build on. And I too like alliteration. So I have 5 points that I want to make briefly, allowing more time then for conversation and interaction. So back to the problem challenge statement, something on the project logic and the evaluation framework, setting that in place up front. A little bit more on partnerships and strategic alliances, something on passion and focus area, and then just a bit on my own principles and personal story as it relates to where and who I would like to collaborate with going forward. And having said that, I'll also weave in 3 case studies or examples as well. So let's start with the problem challenge. And what I find, you know, adding on to what our colleague shared, that in addition to all the work that's done to try to formulate and research and clearly articulate your statement, that it's of great value to look at what else has been done in that field, how they framed their challenge, and then learn from their innovative platforms and ways of presenting research. And these days, this idea of technology online, where once we could do a map hand-drawn, now we're going to be able or have to do it online, and just very innovative examples of collaborative, articulated approaches to defining the problem and then sharing and building on that platform. So some of the places or directions I've looked, obviously child-friendly city work, but there's some really interesting work being done on cities generally. So Hungry Cities Partnership, and you begin to see that when you go to their platforms, it's not just about the research, it's about the innovative ways of presenting their work, how they're affecting policy, and really about the impact of their work. And I also see it as iterative. So it's not like you come up with your challenge and you move forward. No, you come up with your challenge, you think about it, you share, you just sort of reflect, and then you have to go back in order to really frame what you want to focus on. So with our proposal, we are looking at some of the contexts and challenges, ways to move forward to making the city more livable. So there was a lot there to begin with, but then we really needed to unpack that and think about innovative responses and how to integrate child-centered methods and approaches. So the second point I want to come to is this idea about how to begin to assess your proposal, begin to frame it in a way that it makes sense, it flows. And I know you've all heard of the theory of change and logic models, so I'm just briefly going to differentiate here. The logic model is that visual illustration of your outputs, expected outcomes. And you know, some people are really good at logic models. When you sit down to work on your proposal, find a friend that just thinks this is fun, and really, you know, sit down, do a sort of, you know, stickies on the wall or a virtual wall, and really brainstorm, you know, the inputs, outputs. But you know, you can't have a logic model if you haven't thought through the theory of change. And the theory of change is that foundational concept that provides a descriptive understanding of that pathway you're going to take to bring about change. Because it's not about getting the grant. It's about affecting and influencing change in some substantive way. And so the theory of change is more a pathway, it's more complex, it's more about cause and effect. So some of the questions that were already articulated by my colleague: what is that problem you're trying to solve? Who's your audience, how you're going to reach them, and really down to how you're going to measure that, so that whatever you're putting forward is really clear to the reviewers that not only have you thought about the challenge, you've researched best practices, you know your field, but you understand how you're going to affect and impact change. An example of this that I worked on for many years, it was an e-learning platform with UN Habitat, focusing on the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm sharing this not just because it was successful for many years. We did online e-training in India as well as many countries around the world, but why our funding stopped. What happened is great project, great ideas, lots of outcomes, but we weren't able to articulate the theory of change in a substantive enough way that the funder continued with the funding beyond the initial pilot. So, and when I look back at that now, I think, well, if we had been very articulate up front, I think that would have helped us continue with the funding much beyond. And I'm happy to answer questions on that. But again, wanting you to learn and build on mistakes. So partnerships, strategic alliances, we've already heard about, how you make your connections can be very, opportune in the moment, serendipity sometimes, but source the expertise, identify mutual areas of collaboration, network, know the donor landscape and values. So you're really careful in who you're collaborating in. And remember, it's not about you or the organization, really, it's about that challenge you want to address. So always keep in mind the end user, the group that you hope that will have some positive outcome or impact of what you've done. So my second case study relates to work that's being done at the UFV, University of the Fraser Valley, through funding from Universities Canada. And it's all about internationalization. And to me, it's a really interesting example of strategic partnership because the focus of the research is in providing internationalization. But in the process of doing this, the internships, collaborative research, this is where we begin to get connected. So no project's too small. No opportunity is really something to overlook. If you can see a really strong output in terms of networks and collaboration and opportunities. And we've been able to leverage these partnerships through this internship program in many different ways, again, aligning with the area of interest that I'm working in as well. So my fourth point is more to passion, because I think you could be successful in a research project, but you're not going to carry it out very well if you've lost your passion, if it doesn't align in some way with what's really important to you, but important to your work, important perhaps at my stage in life to some form of legacy, small or little. And so for me at this point, everything aligns with urban planning, with policy, and also, and I also want to be in a place where I can pivot. There's a challenge, there's an issue, something like COVID-19 and the pandemic. So in the midst of it, my passion is so well structured and organized that I can shape my research outcomes and shift as needed to address the challenges that the current circumstances might bring in the midst of it. And then further to that is my third case study. And about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to be part of a workshop, to be in Chandigarh, to focus on child-friendly cities as a topic, but it never really went anywhere. So, to my surprise, when I get the call from my colleague, or the email, I guess, saying, do you want to work on this project? I'm going, oh my gosh, do I ever want to work on this project? And what an honor. And, the questions about shifting the focus of the child being in the world, children to be considered as citizens now rather than future citizenship is something we started to have a conversation on, and it really didn't go to the place that we had hoped it would at that time. So my fifth point in terms of principles and takeaways that perhaps some of you can glean from what I'm sharing is that partnerships are about reciprocity. And you just can't have a partnership if you don't carefully articulate how you're both going to benefit, but also grow through the experience. Patience. If you hope to have some kind of transformative impact, sometimes it happens in spite of you, and it happens in time. So to be patient. Participatory research tools, I'm all about ingenuity and empowerment, human-centered design. So for me, that's a key principle in everything I'm involved in going forward. And then obviously the policy piece. We can affect communities, but the longer longevity of what we're trying to do must translate at some level into policy. So a few summary points, again, is that you have to learn from our failures, build, move on, reapply. Sometimes we take additional steps to learn. More recently, I've been placed on a Canadian government review of federal grants, and that being on that end of the spectrum has been really helpful for me. And as well, I'm participating in a webinar that addresses a proposal that I failed on. And I think that's a really good way, just like we all are doing now, to continue to learn. And then I guess, just to put it back, that we find ourselves in a place and time, and we do what we feel we're supposed to be involved in. And it's important. It may not be as great as you hope it might be, but it's still important. And then for me, on a personal level, it's like, okay, sometimes you start something, it doesn't end the way you want it to, you move on, and then miraculously in time, you return. And I really do thank my colleague for involving me in this project and for the opportunity to all of you to work on this. So I think I'll stop there because I feel like the questions are already there, and I'm happy to expand on anything that I've shared already. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sherry and Dr. Kaur, for this wonderful sharing of thoughts, sharing of experience, and that can build up a strong proposal to win over the Shastri grant or any other grant facilitated through any funding agency. Just to add on from from administrative perspective, and sitting as an ex officio on the committees that decide on candidature, on awarding these grants, the kind of observations that we have while we are adjudicating these grants is. And there are a couple of things that committee focuses on. So as you know, it's a multi-tier evaluation that we have. So when you send the application to Shastri Institute, it is reviewed by officials inside, in-home, for its eligibility criteria and whether it's meeting its basics or not. And if you are meeting the criteria that is set for the program, the applications are sent to at least 3 peer reviewers, and these reviewers are from India and Canada. And for your information, it is always a blind review. So the reviewers, the subject experts, are going to see the subject matter only. They're not going to evaluate you on the basis of your credentials, your affiliation, or your partners in Canada or India. So it's purely based on subject matters that the peer review takes place. There can be 2 evaluators from Canada, there can be 2 evaluators from India. So in total, there would not be less than 3 subject experts that would be seeing your proposal and giving their remarks. Now, based on this review that we receive from peers, we sort out the applications. Like if there were 100 applications for this program at the peer reviewer stage, we will only be selecting 40 at maximum. So your subject content need to be so thorough that you can impress upon the subject's experts that this is worth considering a proposal. So once this sorting is done, these 40 applications that are sorted at that stage will be going to the adjudication committee. Now, the adjudication committee is the decision-making body that who out of these 40 would be getting the grant. And usually in the research, in the program that I'm talking about, Shastri Institutional Collaborative Research Grant, it is not more than 7 to 10 grants that we are dispersing. So for that matter, the adjudication committee comprises of 2 academicians and researchers from India side and 2 from Canada side. So it's a binational composition of the adjudication committee that we formulate to review and take a final decision. There's a program officer sits on it who is responsible for providing inputs from the applicant's perspective. And there's an ex officio from Shastri Institute who provides guideline on the mandate of the program so that a wise decision can be made. Now, this is the stage wherein I think maximum inputs are taken by the adjudicators in terms of the competency of the scholar, in terms of budgeting what they are proposing, in terms of their passion, as Dr. N talked about, which is reflected through their writings in the proposal. What kind of passion you carry to carry out such research that you are proposing to Shastri to fund. Now, I would start with, the subject matter. Of course, there has to be some innovative ways to present what you need to do, as well as, newness to the proposal. There have been a lot of work worldwide going on, but what is new that you want to bring out of your research is very important for the adjudicators to understand. Sometimes there is inherent meaning to it. There is, really thought-provoking, ideas there, but they are not reflected well in your proposal while you place it. So it is important that the thoughts and the ideas that you carry in this project are reflected well, because there's not going to be any interview or personal interaction with the applicant. So everything on paper is speaking for your thoughts. So you have to be very, very explicit about it. Of course, ethics is very important. So whenever you think that the research that you are proposing would need ethics committee approval, please explicitly mention about it, so that that assessment can be done by the adjudicators at the time of awarding as well. Very important component is on budget, and I would say that before coming to budget, I would also like to highlight the need for this study, the need for this research to be carried out in collaboration. And if there is any component of mobility in your program, why that mobility is needed for that particular research that you are proposing, why you need to travel down, why a researcher of your project need to travel down to Canada or from Canada to India, have to be justified explicitly, because it should not be seen as a grant that is used for travel only. So that brings me down to the component on budgeting, which is very, very crucial to win the proposal. Of course, if you are very firm in your research content, then budget is also carries the equal markings. And I would say that it has to reflect in the contribution coming in from the other sources. You should try to bring in more contribution in forms, in direct payments. So what kind of contribution your own affiliating institution is bringing in is something important to address while you are drafting the budget part of your research proposal. Also, the rationale. Rationale is very important for each expense that you are presenting. If you have a field visit done for that research, you should be very, very prominent in saying why you need to do that, why you are hiring a research scholar to do this field work, why you are appointing an RA. Also, building up expenses towards young scholars, young researchers, young academic fraternity is very, very important to win over a proposal. So I would suggest that principal investigators involve junior faculty, doctoral scholars, even undergrad scholars for some work within the project. And if the payment is due for them, would be appreciated by the adjudication committee, because it's not all that is being carried out by the principal investigator. So there has to be well disbursement of funding that you are requesting on various components, various agents that are working on that project for you. Also important is to justify why you are buying any gadget. So buying of laptops, cameras, and any other conduit is not permissible under our Shastri funding. But if there is any precise, a software that you want to purchase or take a license on, supposedly SPSS is required, and you don't have that, maybe, you can justify that, and then we will allow you to do that. But here in the contribution that you can show from your side while you're presenting the budget is that license is given by your institution. So there's a cost that is coming in from your institution to support your research. These are interesting ways to present it. Sometimes, we are not so innovative in our minds to present the way it should be presented. So there would be some direct or indirect contribution coming in from your parent institution or from other agencies, which need to be reflected explicitly. We shy away from mentioning those supports. Please don't be shy, bring them on, because these are important to the adjudication committee to decide on the contribution, the support that you are getting from your parent institution for this. So these are a couple of areas wherein I would say that you need to keep in mind while drafting the proposal. Also, as we have much talked about the collaboration, of course, there would be challenges because of the time difference, but the inputs from both the ends are very, very important for a successful collaborative research project. So a churning of thoughts way before you submit your application is very important. So we all are using virtual methods to get connected with people. So use them. And also, why there is, this brings me to highlight here that why you need to have this grant and why you need to do this in collaboration is also important. Why not? Why Canada? Why India? Why not USA? Why not you collaborate with New Zealand for this? Why don't you go to Australia to collaborate? Why the focus is on India and Canada is the core of any grant that Shastri gives. So keep in mind to focus on your research proposal, why India and why Canada. So these were some inputs from our side. I would now request my colleagues to take over the charge and bring out more questions for two great speakers that we have with us. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So yes, there are a bunch of questions and people had been, raising their hands, and looks like they're really excited to ask questions. So I will, take up each question one by one. So, I mean, I will leave it up to the panelists to determine who can answer that question. So the first question is from one of the attendees. What if someone's study area totally belongs to Canada itself? Being an Indian resident, is it mandatory to select a topic that belongs to India?
Prachi would be in a better position to answer.
Yeah. So thank you for this question. Very interesting question. In fact, well, it's a binational collaboration that we are proposing. The guidelines, the outlook of the program is so that it has to be binational in approach. The problem that lies in Indian context, if you are addressing something from the Indian context, of course it has to be from Indian context. But then why you want to bring in Canada? So if it is exclusively for India and there's no component that you can see coming in from the Canadian end, I think then you should not be applying for the Shastri grant. You should be approaching some national level agencies for that particular grant, because Shastri deals with India and Canada as an integral component on any research that we find. I hope this answers.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul. So next question. Air pollution from HEMS used in coal mines can be considered worth for funding. One of my postdoc fellow students was awarded Shastri Fellowship. When will her program begins? I think that again goes back
to Prachi.
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for this query herein. Though we would have sorted this out separately, but then now that you have asked, I mean, I would say that, as you know, everything is on standstill right now. Nothing in hands of Shastri at present. We are going by the advisories issued by respective governments in India and Canada. So as you know, international travel is on board. We have advised all our scholars to go online, do virtual meetings with their affiliates in Canada and India, and to carry out, at least finish a component of their research before it is time for them to travel. And we are not sure when international borders are going to be open and aviation industry is going to function again. So everything is on standstill right now, and I'm sorry, but I really can't respond to this at immediate, because it's all subject to how it develops, how situation furthers in India and Canada and globally as well. So I'm not saying that we can't predict anything, but what I can say here that we will have to wait and watch until there are new developments in terms of advisories issued and the situation that presents itself to us. Yeah, and we can follow it up through email or phone calls separately, apart from this, webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul. I was just going over the list of all the questions that have popped here, and looks like a lot of them are, for our institute to answer. So I would request all the attendees to also, have, keep the questions ready for our other speakers, Dr. Ravinder Kaur and Dr. Cherry Hens, and for Ms. Reshma Rana Verma. So the next question in line is, would SICRG consider informing the unsuccessful applicants about the reasons for rejection? Some funding agencies send a brief note to the unsuccessful applicants to them when they communicate their decision. Getting such specific feedback from the funding agency can be very useful for the applicants when they want to apply the next time. Over to Dr. Kaul.
Yeah, thank you, Piki, for bringing this up. Again, this is an administrative question which is not appropriate for this forum, but I can say that yes, we do provide the feedback, and the feedback is given by the respective office. We, on our own, we do not give feedback, but if you are interested to understand, and there have been applicants who have been writing to us, they were not successful once, twice, and thrice, but in the fourth time, with continuous feedback, and they have improved upon based on the feedback received from the peer reviewers as well as from the adjudicators. So their evaluation is shared with them on their request basis. It is not so that we inform all applicants, unsuccessful applicants, about the gaps in their applications. But if you need those feedbacks, we certainly provide that. Write to the program officer concerned, and she'll come back to you with the feedback as and when she has time to adjust to it. Thank you.
Moving on to the next question. Thanks, Dr. Kaul. Is it okay to propose an interdisciplinary collaboration, or do you recommend collaboration between faculty members from the same disciplines in both the countries?
No, it could be interdisciplinary as well.
Yeah, Dr. Kaur has just said this, and we are all about interdisciplinarity. So this is a world we are living wherein everything is integrated, whether we are about COVID-19, it's economy, it's society, it's medicine, it's a community at large, that it's a global society that we are dealing with. And there are situations, there are aspects to our life which are all integrated, so nicely intervened. So why to have standalone, standalone proposals? So we very much appreciate subjects being integrated, and in interdisciplinary way they are presented to Shastri Institute. Yeah, and if you see the collaborative research, the guidelines also say so. Any notification that we announce will have this line there, that we promote this interdisciplinarity. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaur and Dr. Kaul. For SICRG grant, can we pick up any faculty from all over Canada, or you have a list from where to choose, because my area is studied by few? And are there any limits?
I think it has to be from the member institutions.
Yeah, as Dr. Kaur said, that it has to be from the member institutions. We have all prestigious, around 40 institutions in Canada that are part of our Shastri network, and 115 plus from India side. So you name a good institution, it is on our board. So you can choose one from the members list for collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul. Are there any limits or number of times to apply for the Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute's funding? And what is the timeline for the entire application cycle from applying to completion and post-grant formalities?
Reshma, would you like to respond back to this, or I can answer back? Reshma is on mute, I think. Okay, so there's no limit to your submission of application to Shastri if you're not being successful. But there has to be a gap of at least 2 years in receiving of grants. So if you have received the Shastri Collaborative Research Grant this year, you will not be eligible to apply until you complete 2 years in between. So only after 2000, if it is 2020 that you have got this grant, only in 2023 you can apply for any other grant that Shastri offers. So there has to be a gap of 2 years. Is there any component to this question, Piki, that I have missed out?
No, I think it's just the timeline for the entire application and from applying to
Yeah,
completion.
timeline. So
Formalities, yeah.
yeah, timeline is like we take around 4 to 5 months to complete the process from the day of announcement to the announcing of the results, and then we give substantive time for scholars to take up their award.
6 months approximately it goes.
Yeah, in total.
Please brief about how to prepare the timeline. Like, shall we prepare prepare month-wise? What is to be done in which month, or should it be in general?
If you
Maybe the
prepare it
experts
month-wise,
will-
it is better. That speaks of the clarity that the researcher has while executing the project. We did it month-wise.
Yeah, it all depends on the kind of work that you are doing, and it's always
Yeah.
bring clarity to have to pen down the timeline for ourselves. I pen it down for every day. You know, I start my day and I see this is the list that I have to complete in terms of tasks to be done. So if it is month-wise, I think it would be more achievable. And if you're not
Yes.
being able to do this, you can take it down to the next month. But for your own clarity, and that is what probably the education committee appreciates, you know, when they see clarity in their work outlook. So I think it depends on your work, the kind of work that you're going to propose, but it is always good to break it up so that it's easier for you to pick up in case there's any delays and there's any in between there are any breaks that you encounter. So accordingly you can fix it up as well.
Okay, thanks.
Go on, Picky.
Yeah. If someone has already done some research work, is he also eligible for the Shastri Fellowship to extend the research or some new research work?
I'm sorry, Picky, can you repeat the first line? Say it again.
If someone has already done some research work, is he also eligible for the Shastri Fellowship to extend the research or some new research work?
Yeah, if you have done, supposedly it's a urban settlement, and supposedly it's a work that Dr. Kaur and Dr. N are continuing. If there's another component into it that they have not addressed in this particular project, or supposedly there was something that they were carrying out together on some other project with some other funding, and they realize that there's another component that is missing here, and that can be supported by Shastri, so they can cull out that component and propose it to Shastri as a separate project. Similarly, if you have already started some research on your own and you think that there's a component that was missing in that, and that component can be funded by Shastri Institute separately, of course, that can be done. We also encourage you to collaborate with other funding agencies. So supposedly, if you receive a fund to do XYZ project with Shastri, but you think that ABCD was missing, and for that you would like to write a proposal to the other funding agency, we don't mind that doing. But you have to be accountable for the funding that you get from Shastri for the work that Shastri has supported for. So you have to be demarcated in terms of what goes in which project. It is for you to devise a way to present it to Shastri or to any other funding agency. We don't mind intermingling of the research, but you have to be, there are ethics involved here. So you have to be very sure why you want to bring this to Shastri and why this component need to go to the other funding agency. So we are open to it, but there has to be some logic behind why you want to do that.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Paul. Next question. I understand your research included children. Have you implemented the findings in both countries, ma'am? I think that goes to the speakers.
We are yet to conduct this research, and the findings would definitely have a policy implication for Chandigarh as well as for Canada, of course, because it will give cross-cultural insights.
Very interesting component. Would you like to add something here, Dr. Ann?
Cherry hands.
Well, as already shared, we are yet to complete the research, but I appreciate the question because it will, you know, as we're adjusting to the current pandemic and circumstances, I think there's some opportunity to pause and reflect and to be very intentional because while we may say Canada's done some things right, there's still much to learn, and in fact, often to learn from our Global South partners. And so I think it's a really good question, and I know we'll be on a call soon this week, Dr. Kaur and I, and we can further shape our outcomes and findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Enns. And I have one more question for you. Is it advisable to understand the environmental sustainability in terms of carbon credits in India and Canada?
Yeah, the question is for me, so
yeah,
thank
right.
you for the question. If I can link it to the focus of our research, which is on child-friendly, and in child-friendly communities as they're defined and articulated, certainly would suggest that it's important to look at both aspects in the context of each location, although it's not the main emphasis of our work. But I think it is important if that's the answer, but I'm not sure exactly how best to respond at this point. I do think that a lot of what we understood in terms of good city form and good city design is being shifted and shaped in response to the pandemic, even as we understand movement and transportation and good public spaces and play. So I think we've got some reflection to do as we move forward. I don't know if my colleague wants to expand on that further.
Oh, sure, sure.
Okay, so I have one more question, which is in relation to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the related research which is emerging out of it. So one of the attendees have asked if SICRG is going to be initiating or will be introducing any type of COVID-19 projects.
Okay, so very timely question. We are about to announce our next round of applications. Call for proposals are going to be up on air in next week's time. And you'll be surprised that all our programs have gone digital this time, because we know that for the whole year, we are going to be living in a constrained world. And the mobility is going to be very, very limited only when it is required. So keeping that in mind, Shastri has gone and revised all its programs to go virtually. So any mobility grant that initially was meant for the scholars to be in Canada or India have also gone under a lot of changes. So we have discouraged that mobility part, and we have requested scholars to be innovative in their proposals and propose researches that can be done virtually. Especially for COVID-19 pandemic, yes, we are going to include 4 major grants, approximately 40,000 Canadian dollar each grant, and we are going to give away 4 awards this year to talk about, to research on anything and everything related to COVID-19. This is going to be a very, very innovative project that we are going to propose, because it allows you to bring in other bodies, other agencies that are working on COVID-19 pandemic, and which may include a startup, which may include young women entrepreneurs, or young, in general, women or men entrepreneurs from India or Canada, scientist, a social scientist, an economist, a financial advisor. So there is a scope of bringing in research from all perspectives to this project that we are announcing in a week's time. So look out for the announcement that is going to be aired in a week's time, and you will be surprised that everything is going on digital in terms of this year's programming for Shastri Institute. Stay tuned. Look into our website, look into our Twitter account or Facebook handle. We are going to promote it through all these platforms, so you will get to know what is there in the store for you to explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul. Another quick question for Dr. Enns. What is a good time to approach Canadian scholars with reference to the academic calendar in Canadian institutions? For example, beginning of fall versus summer breaks and grant announcement time across the year.
That's a really good question. If our semesters generally work from September to December, then we break, and then January to April we break, and then May, June often. I say don't approach in August, and don't approach in December, but otherwise I think any time is really open. It's just someone in August might be slower to respond as well in December. But I think time these days, we're all open 24/7, it seems, right? So there's no time anymore. But I think if you're looking for someone to have focused effort in terms of the proposal, it's mostly just giving them heads up. So if you're thinking of speaking to someone and you know that the grant's going to be due in November, try to give them a couple months in advance notice if you're hoping for their input.
Yeah, and just to add on here to Dr. Enns, that usually, the scholars, young scholars, even the faculty that goes to Canada or is the time of summers, like when they are towards the end of their academic session, or there's a holiday season in India, they would like to optimize that time by going to Canada and being there with their affiliates. So just try to see if that, because as Dr. Enns said, that August is the time when most of them, I would say that most of them take a little break in terms of holidaying and all. So try to focus on April, May, and June more if you want to utilize your summers, because teaching learning is not happening to that great extent, and professors have more time to give you to the visitors from the other countries. So international programs are at its peak when it is summertime in Canada, because of course, because of the obvious reason, which is like good weather there. So most of the Indians and of course everybody would like to Canada and witness its beauty, summer beauty there at that time. Also important here is the time when it is autumn time for us, like October, November. So many of them, Indian scholars would like to travel around that time because there's an autumn break in between, or winter break. Winter break, most of them avoid because winters are harsh in Canada in comparison to India. So autumn is also a good time. Just be in touch with your affiliate and check out the details. I'm sure they are welcoming and very, very adjusting in terms of accommodating your schedule. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Kaul. There's just one suggestion coming from one of the attendees. Please include autonomous colleges affiliated to listed universities, as the academic standards are always scrutinized by the university.
A very interesting question, and we have been contemplating and deliberating on this aspect for a pretty long time. It's over 1 year that we have been talking about. The season is yet pending. The membership to Shastri is very crucial. It's very, I would say, it's very, very competitive in terms of stringent criteria that we have set in. Not to say that there are not autonomous colleges that are very good, of good quality, but the point here is that if we open it to autonomous colleges and institutions, we would be flooded. Even one single university have thousands of affiliated colleges attached to it. If you talk about Punjab University, I am sure Dr. Kaur can vouch for me that there would be at least 500 to 600 minimum. I don't have any idea, but I am sure that there would be these many affiliated colleges. Yeah, so if we allow them to join Shastri network, it would be a vast network, and we are not that big organization, and the pool of money that we get from governments is very limited. Now, if we open it up for so many institutions, imagine a time wherein we have 10,000 institutions as a member of Shastri. The pie that we have with us to give away to our members is this much only. And if it is distributed amongst 10,000 people, 10,000 institutions, it is going to be very, very limited. So from programming perspective, from disbursement of thinking about it, whether to include autonomous colleges or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. There's this one question which is coming from our Facebook page where we are live right now, where this discussion can be, viewed. Which kind of proposal is given more preference? A micro one targeting a specific problem which can actually be solved, or a macro one dealing with a general problem where problem cannot be solved but be advanced? If you want, I can repeat the question. I know it's a bit long.
No, I understand. I got it.
Okay.
I think all depends on the nature of the research that you are proposing. Both are important. Both components of the research are important. So if it's a micro one, you are bringing out a substantial output to the research that you are going to convey. But if it's a journal, well, probably you will bring out the outcome, which is significant, but it's a generic significance to very many fraternity in our life, not confining to one particular domain of research or knowledge. So both have equal importance in our life. And the same goes for applied and theoretical research as well. Applied has its own value, and theoretical research also contains some value to it. But if it is a theoretical research, I would say that it should lead to, the theory should be developed in a way to help applied research. Its applicability is very, very important here for us to understand. So purely theoretical projects are not encouraged too much unless they have reflected on the applied side of that theory. So for me, micro and macro are equally important components of research. All depends on what kind of research you are proposing. And if you're able to justify your research well to the committee, I think nobody stops you from doing. So from administrator's perspective, I think we are open to everything if it has rationale to be done under that particular grant.
Exactly. I think one has to build up the background and rationale. And if it stems from the macro and is rooted in micro, it works.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Okay, the next question would be, can independent scholar apply for SICRG grant?
Well, that all depends which grant you are applying for. There are individual grants, like if you're a student, you can apply for a student internship, doctoral research, the postdoctoral research component. If you're a faculty, you can apply for faculty mobility program. But if you are applying for collaborative research grant, then it has to be a binational team, which means that if you are a faculty, of course, if you are a student, you cannot apply for that grant individually on your own. You need to have a full-fledged faculty to apply for that grant in collaboration with your partner from the other countries. If you're from Canada or from India, you have to partner from the other country. But if you are a student and you are bright, share your ideas with your professors and encourage them if they can float a proposal to Shastri, taking your ideas, building it up, but we need to have a professor. Unfortunately, we are not gone so beyond that. We encourage for such huge grants. We are considering that students may not be, competent enough, not just in terms of their, credentials or their ability to do that research, but in terms of responsibilities as an administrator at their respective institutions. So taking a grant is a big responsibility for which you need to carry some weightage in your respective institutions as well. That's why collaborative research is meant for the faculties and researchers who are associated with our member institution. So individually, there are other grants that you can explore, but for this particular grant for which the webinar is being conducted, which is Shastri Institutional Collaborative Research Grant, it has to be a team, binational team from India and Canada from Shastri's member institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul. If a faculty has extensive research experience and received grants from different government agencies, but not a permanent faculty in university. Is he or she eligible for applying to SICRG grants?
Sorry, the one cannot be a main applicant, principal investigator, but you can always serve in a team. So as I said, that the collaborative research allows you to work even young students, fellows, young faculties, part-time faculty or adjunct faculty, as well as a team of the collaborative research grant. So if you think that you can fit into a grant wherein the lead applicant can be a permanent faculty at affiliating institution, but you can be part of that project very well. We don't object to that. That all depends on the principal and the co-applicant, how they see it. So if they see the worth of having you on the project, we have no objections at all. But as an individual faculty, you cannot, I'm sorry, but you cannot apply because we are looking here for the accountability part of it as well. So no independent research is funded by Shastri unless and until you are affiliated with one of the member institutes as a full-time faculty here. Thank you.
Thank you. I have been applying from last 3 years, and recently I have applied in travel grant, which had a deadline last year, but till date I haven't received any intimation regarding its selection.
Well, travel grants are educated by Canada. Again, I would say that you can always email us these questions because these are purely administrative and relating to Shastri. I will more appreciate questions coming in from our two great speakers who have spared their time to be with us. We should optimize their presence here. But for this, please write to our Canadian colleague, Ms. Mahmouda Alveen. I'm not sure which year's grant you are talking about, but she will come back to you very soon if she has any inputs to provide. Thank you.
Can you provide information on postdoctoral student fellowship? If I wish to apply for this fellowship, is it necessary that the host should be from a member institute of SICRG, which I guess you have already answered?
Already answered this question, and dear fellow, whosoever has asked this question, I would suggest that we are going to conduct another webinar on postdoctoral scholars for the doctoral and postdoctoral scholars. So I request you to attend that. That would be directly related to your field and your category of award that you intend to apply for. So it would be more useful for you to get all these questions sorted at that platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul. I'm just, just scrolling over so that I haven't missed any question, because there were some questions which were very much related to what you have already answered, so I haven't read that out here. I think that actually brings us to the end of all the questions that I'm looking at, and I think have, couple of more that are still, coming forward. Would we have maybe another 5 minutes to go for another question?
Yeah, just 5 minutes more, Vicky, not beyond that, because our colleague from Canada need to go to bed. It's night time, not.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please be mindful on that as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure. So just one last question then. Will it be okay to continue the same proposal with the feedback we have received, or we need to write a new proposal?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can go on with the same proposal with the feedback that you get from Shastri. If in case you were not successful in your attempt to get the grant, improvise the proposal based on the feedback that program officer shares with you based on the feedback received from peer reviewers and the adjudicators. And many have been successful in that way. There are always cases wherein they don't succeed as well, I would not deny. But then I don't know whom to blame here, our stars probably, but we try our best to facilitate by commenting and by sharing the observations from different forums so that you can build it up accordingly and present it in more constructive manner, addressing the gaps that have been identified by evaluation committees. So I think you can apply with the same proposal as an improvised version. Thank you.
Yeah, I can see some of the questions they are asking, like, the reviewers have given us that it's a good proposal, but still we were not able to make for this. So, I mean, reviewers are there just to give their comments on any of the subject area that you have proposed, but it doesn't mean that certainly that project will be awarded to the candidate. Because some of the proposals receive excellent comments, some get a good comment. So that is the because we have two type of evaluation. The second round is on the technical aspect as well. So that's a mix evaluation, and then finally decision is taken. Maybe Dr. Cole may elaborate it further.
No, Reshma, thank you for bringing this up. You know, there are two levels, as I explained earlier, that the subject expert sees the subject part of it, the content, the main research that is being done. But the adjudicators, those 4 adjudicators, 2 from India, 2 from Canada, oversee the your credentials, your affiliation, your ability to carry out that kind of research, what kind of budgeting you have done. So they see from the broad perspective, and all seeing a proposal from mechanical engineering, you know, so it's so wide for them to understand. They go by how it appears. It is not the subject content that they are reviewing. They are seeing the overall feasibility, its applicability, and its relevance to the current world. So I would say that good point at second stage of evaluation is that it's very, very comprehensive, and it's been assessed by a versatile group, which can point out layman's questions as well. So it's this is what Reshma probably wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul, Reshma, and Dr. Kaur, Dr. Enns. I think this brings us to the end of all the questions. We have gone through almost all of them. Like I mentioned before, there were few questions that were overlapping and which have already been answered. So I will now pass it over to Dr. Kaul and Reshma to proceed with the rest of the formal webinar.
Reshma, would you like to say something, or I can conclude?
No, you can just continue.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Shari N and Dr. Ravinder Kaur, for being here this morning and evening for you, Dr. Shari. This was amazing. I know there were questions that were directly posed to me or posed to Shastri Institute, but I'm sure they might have some questions out of the presentation that you made, the things that you have talked about that may emerge a little later when they sink in the information. I suggest that they, to all the attendees who are there listening to us, that they can always come back to us, and I'm sure the 2 scholars, those who are with us today, will not mind answering and responding to your emails if there is a passion in a particular on a particular project that you want to bring out some more in details and share with these 2 professors. They will be happy to answer if I'm not wrong. I also want to thank them for not just for the sparing time, but also taking up some relevant issues in India and Canada. Anything related with urban sphere or rural sphere, or relating with any way relating with SDGs that are set up by UN are of crucial importance to Shastri. And we thank you for suggesting such wonderful research out of Shastri grant. Thank you so very much. I also want to thank my colleagues for setting this up so beautifully. There was no problems encountered in between. It went all smooth. So thank you to Reshma, Rana, Piki Sharma, and Meenakshi Malhotra, my colleagues who are working on the background. Most of the thanks are due to the attendees because for you this was devised, and I see that there's great participation happening. I wish you all the best, and I hope that you have culled out major points from these discussions and deliberations that has happened over the period of 1 hour, 30 minutes. I think it's time to wind up. My thanks again to both of you, the speakers for today, and we look forward to engage greatly in the time to come. Thank you so much. There's going to be a poll. I request everyone to poll on it so that we can understand how we went for it and how we have to improvise further. Last words from our speakers, if there are any, we would love to make you speak. Yeah, thank you.
We would welcome any questions, queries from the attendees, and they can always pose those questions or emails, and they would be answered in due course of time. And a big thanks to Shastri for giving us this opportunity to be virtually seeing each other and meeting each other, interacting each other. And so these interactions will have a long way to go ahead, and I'm very sure they'll be beneficial for us as well as participants. After all, it's a reciprocal learning. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul. We'll now quickly go for the poll, requesting all the attendees to take a minute and just, answer the questions, how satisfied they are with this webinar, and if they have any suggestions. So we will keep this window of evaluation survey open for a minute, and you can type in your answers. You can select from the multiple choice answers for some of the questions.
Dr. Sherry and Dr. Kaur, you may like to leave now if too much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Enns. Thank you, Dr. Kaur.
Have a good day. Thank you, ma'am. Have a
You
good
too.
day ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kaur. Yeah, bye-bye for now.
So we have ended the poll, and just one more thing we would like to highlight here, dear attendees, that we will be making this recording available. It may take a little while for us to upload these videos on our YouTube channel, which will be informed to each one of us. However, in the meantime, if you have a Facebook account, please feel free to like our official Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute page on Facebook, and you can view this you can view this webinar session on our Facebook news feed. And if you have any questions pertaining to the webinar, please feel free to write to us at sici.org.in. So I will again, hand it over to Ms. Reshma Rana Verma to do the formal closing. Thank you.
You can directly write. There is an email ID for the program queries, SICI applications at sici.org.in. They may write directly at that email ID. There's a specific email ID for the queries related to the programs. The question may be posted directly at that email ID.
Thank you, Reshma. Dr. Kaul, do you have any words before we leave?
No, thank you all those who are present here. There digitally we are meeting. I'm not being able to see everyone, but my voice is being heard, and I thank you all for your wonderful participation in this webinar. As I said earlier, it's a series that started today. There are going to be more coming in, and if you wish to see that, the schedule, Ms. Sharma, Ms. P.K. Sharma can make this available to you. This can be posted on website and through our social media as well, so that anybody who's interested in a precise program can log in on the day when we are talking about we are going to hold a webinar on that particular program. So I encourage you to be more participating, and I'm sure out of these you will be able to cull out some wonderful tips for yourself to craft a good proposal, craft a proposal that can win you award. Thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul. Thank you, Reshma. Thank you, Meenakshi. And have a good day, everyone. Goodbye.